Alright, so let's go ahead and put this thing together. So we're going to use the quick start guide here. For step 1, we're going to connect the gantry to the base with these 4 bolts. And that's these long bolts we saw earlier. Yeah, this is pretty simple, guys. We're going to grab the upper portion of the printer. You guys can see there's a little slot there that it'll just sit right into. And it should slide right in, just like that. So I lowered you down, guys, a bit so maybe you can see better. But yeah, it just literally just slots in there and sits. And then we're going to take our bolt, a couple bolts, and we're going to start them on there. So we're going to use the largest wrench that was included, tighten them up. So I'm not going to full tighten them, just kind of snug a little bit. And let's do the other side. So same thing here. You might have to move the gantry up or down a little bit to find the threads. We can go ahead and tighten this side pretty good. Now you don't want to go too tight on this kind of design because most of the job for the bolts is just compresses to the side to hold the gantry. And I really like this design because it's quite rigid because of the slotting in. Snug these up. And that's it. And our gantry is connected to the base. So for step 2, we're going to install the spool holder, and that goes on the top. So this is what our spool holder looks like, and it just clips on there. Nothing that we have to screw on or anything like that. And our filament detection is already on it. This being the front here, we're going to set it like this and go down, and it just clips in. And maybe you guys can see we have a wire here, so be careful not to smash it if it's like, you know, in the way. And this wire is actually for the detector, and I guess we can go ahead and plug it in. So our spool will go here, and then our filament will feed through the detector down into the extruder. So yeah, guys, after looking at the spool holder a little more, I'm thinking maybe the filament detector goes to the front like this. And maybe a good idea to slide this to the side a bit so we can kind of center the feeding. That will have an even range to reach on either side. All right, for step 3, we're going to be installing the screen, and that's actually simpler than it looks. And that's because it clicks in right into this bracket here. And on the screen, the little bolts on the back, that's what slots into these loops here. So yeah, the only thing we would need to do is plug it in here on the back, which is straightforward. And now just kind of run our cable where it's happy, line up those little bolts into the grooves, and then kind of go down to click in. And that's it. So it just literally slots in, and then you can pull it out. And if your screen is kind of a little loose like mine is, we can grab the included flat screwdriver and actually tighten these little bolts up if they're not tightened all the way. And that's gonna, you know, give it a little better clearance there and not wobble as much, which mine's pretty good now. And it looks really nice here on the side. So for step 4, we're going to connect everything. And here they kind of go through a lot of little things and give you tips on getting started and also checking your voltage. And we're going to do all that. So most everything is pre-built and plugged. So we got the screen here plugged in the front. Let's go to this side. So here we have a wire, and it's labeled Z2 because there's 2 lead screws. So this one plugs in right here. So our Y is completely connected. We got our other Z motor here, which will be this Z1 wire. And then over here we have some wires that come down from the top, and that's actually from the filament detector. And then we got another wire coming from the base, and we're just going to connect those 2 together. Just like that. And believe it or not, guys, that is everything that we need to connect around the printer. So the next thing we need to do is check all our belts and rollers, and we'll start here with the bed. But before we do that, let's go ahead and run up the X platform here up on the Z. And we're just going to spin the couplers here on the back together, and just a little bit here to get it out of the way. And we probably should have done this before we installed the screen, which is not a big deal because we could just clip it right off. But yeah, if we look here at the bed, guys, you can see there we have 1 eccentric nut. So the way this one works here is we have 3 rollers on each side, which does complicate things a little because we have 2 stationary here and an adjustable in the middle. And then on the other side, we have 2 adjustable and then stationary in the middle. So we'll go on this side first where there's 2 stationaries. And the first thing you want to do is roll the bed around and see if maybe you're too tight. And for sure I am, because I have severe steps in my roll. Like right here, it just grabs and doesn't move. So another way you can do it is stick your hand under there and kind of spin the roller, but they're really far deep in there and kind of hard to reach. But if I reach in there and spin the middle roller, it's completely loose. It's not even touching the bed. So we're gonna grab our open-ended wrench and stick it in there and try to turn that eccentric nut, and that's gonna make the wheel go farther or closer away. So on this one here, we need it closer. And it's really hard to see on this printer, guys. But yeah, we are now touching the rail, and there's some friction on there. So now we can spin around. I'm gonna put this screen back on for now. Our adjustable one is over here and then one over here. And so what I like to do is stick my hand in there and try to see if I can spin them, and I definitely cannot spin them by hand. So that means they are way too tight. So the center is actually decent, which I know the one on the other side is pretty decent. So we just need to loosen these two to kind of relieve the pressure. And unfortunately, guys, not only is it hard to reach it with this short wrench. So the one in the front is actually easy to reach from the front. And we can actually roll completely to the front and even have better access to it here. So finally we're there, and we're actually pretty good on the front. Check the center, pretty good on the center, and pretty good on the back. So you want to be loose enough where the wheels can kind of do a little burnout on the channel, but not too loose where it wobbles. So we don't have no wobble, so we're tight enough, but we're loose enough where we're not pinching too hard around the channel, which will wear out the rollers really fast. And also roll not good with like steps. Let's go ahead and see what we got here. Oh yeah, so much better. Actually perfect. It's smooth as butter now. So yeah, I'm happy of where this is now. If you do need to keep adjusting, definitely take your time and get this right. All right, so I think we're good there. Now all we got to do is check our belt, which is right here. It's actually pretty good tension, but we do have adjustable knobs here that we can spin to make it tighter or looser. I do prefer looser than tighter, because if you're really tight, it could lead to other problems. And plus, you're just stressing everything out when it's too tight. And don't forget that this belt is quite long, so over tightening it is not a good idea. And now we're gonna do our hot end. And so here you'll be able to see a little better how to adjust things. But yeah, what I like to do is just grab the rollers here and kind of try to spin them with my hand. And I can spin these pretty good. They are a little tight, but they do spin. But they're too tough, so I need to loosen it just a little bit. And our eccentric nuts down here. So we got two stationary and then adjustable on the bottom. So we're going to try to loosen this up a bit. Might need to go up just a little bit. And so you want to kind of move it until these rollers are reasonably easy. You do want some friction, but not too much. Now we do have a pretty heavy hot end with direct drive extruder with the motor and everything there. So you want to make these a little bit tighter because you do have quite a bit of weight here that needs to be carried. So yeah, if your rollers are spinning and you're happy with the motion, then you're all done here. Now there are rollers on the ends here, and these normally you don't want to mess with unless they're just way off. I wouldn't worry about these too much, guys, unless you think something is seriously wrong. They're most likely fine, and there's not much adjustability here anyways. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much how you adjust. And I did forget to check the belt on this x-axis, which by the way, the tensioner is on this side. So yeah, same thing that we talked about. Looser is better than tighter, and I think I'm pretty happy with this one here. Yeah, just if you roll it around, you can kind of feel it. So if you're not like smooth, that means something's wrong somewhere. Either the belts are maybe too tight, or maybe too loose, or maybe they're not running true on their gears, pulleys. So you want to check as much as you can to, get it smooth. So for the next part, let's take a closer look at all the details of the printer. So starting on top here, we have the spool holder, our filament detector. And like we saw earlier, the spool holder just clips in, really easy to remove and slide around if you need to. Nice channels. Logo. I like the finish on them. On the top here we have brackets that hold the lead screws on top, and they are with bearings, so this gives support for the lead screw. Looking at the back, we can see we have dual lead screws with the dual motors. Now what's interesting is that they're not tethered on the top with a belt, and normally I like the tethered kind because it does synchronize them, but most of the time the individual ones actually work pretty well. So everything is metal around the printer as far as frame is concerned. We got brass bushings here going down, coupler with the motors, and pretty much same thing here on this side. And this is our x-axis motor, which there you can see the gear and the x-axis end stop switch. So this is the back of our hot end assembly, and we'll look at it here closer in a second. The wiring comes out, and it's actually strain relief there. It's even bolted down to the carriage, very nice. And we do have this weaved sleeve that holds all the wires, and then they just go down in to the back of the printer. And then out of the back there's another wire that goes to the heated bed, which is also strain relieved very nicely. At the very bottom, this is where our power supply is, Y channel, the Y motor, and the end stop switch was just inside of there. And they do have a little cutout here in the back, so you can look at the gear and see how your belt is running. And right below that, guys, is probably one of the more important things that you need to check before you do anything else, is this voltage. And we're able to switch it from 115 to 230. And I don't know if you guys can see, but mine is set to 230. I need to switch that because I am on the 115 voltage. So I'm just going to grab the screwdriver that came with the printer and push it over to the 115 voltage that I need. So make sure you check that before you power on the printer. So the edges have these nice end caps on both sides. And speaking of end caps, we totally forgot to install the ones on here, and they do clip in there if you want to install them. Back to the front, let's take a closer look at the hot end assembly. So we do have a direct drive extruder. So that just means everything is integrated together, the extruder and the hot end. This is where we're going to feed the filament, and it's literally going to go from the top down. And what's impressive, and I don't know how well you guys can see, but everything is metal here, including this arm here. So it's like an all metal extruder assembly. And so this is the motor that runs the extruder gear, which turns and pushes the filament down into the hot end. And on this side, we have the heat break cooling fan, and also a Reality CR Touch, which is quite interesting that it comes standard with a CR Touch on this printer. So yeah, as you guys can see, this printer uses a lot of Creality parts, including the outer bed leveling. And by the way, this is our adjuster for the tension on the extruder. So on the front, we have a pretty large blower fan with a cooling duct that goes right underneath the tip of the nozzle. Pretty impressed that they used the large one here. So we should have a great cooling. Not too much going on here, just have the stepper motor, and underneath that's our heat block. It is insulated with a silicone sock, and yeah, it just looks like pretty nicely built. And the cable management on this thing is great because it looks very nice and clean, and you just have this one cable coming out. So yeah, they did a great job here on the direct drive extruder assembly. So it does run on this 2020 channel, and this is where we adjust the belt. Here's our Y in-stop switch. Going down from there, we got our bed, and the printing volume is 280 by 240 by 300. And this whole part here is a magnetic sheet, and underneath we have a aluminum heated bed that is insulated, and very nice to see on this large bed as it will heat up quickly. So the bed frame is thick, got large knobs to adjust each corner, nice quality springs, and there you guys can see our rollers on both sides. Go ahead and put the sheet back. So you do kind of have to line it up because it magnetizes to certain places. So here on the front, we have the manufacturing label, the printer name, SV01 Pro, the build volume, the machine size, the power supply wattage, 350, rated voltages, which is adjustable in the back, and the weight, 9.8 kilograms. From the label down, you can see this is where we're going to insert our micro SD card to bring files into the printer. And also we have a micro SD slot there to connect the printer to the computer. On the Y rail on the front, this is where we're going to adjust our tension, and heading this way is our display screen. Very nice large size. Let's go ahead and peel this protector, which kind of, honestly, I'm fascinated by these plastic coverings, especially when they don't want to come out. You know, that's what you get if you try to pull it out. So, you know, I'd rather them shrink wrap it or something than do this. This is not a great experience, and now I think I need to get a knife and kind of cut it around to make it clean. So if we go to the right, we can see the display is tilted 45 degrees. So really good angle to look at. And that's pretty much all here. And on the left side, it's pretty clean here, except for when we get to the back, we have our mains input, which is fused, and an on and off switch. And also we get pretty large rubber squishy feet on all four corners, which I really like to see because it'll help with the noise and vibration. But yeah, overall the printer is looking really nice and promising. I love that they put a lot of energy into this area here. So I'm going to cut off this plastic off the screen. We'll plug it in and power it on. All right, so I got the printer plugged in. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Hit the power switch. All right, so it powers up. You can see it says SV01 Pro, and it booted up. Actually, a very quick startup. So you guys probably can't see the screen at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to home this thing. So click on home. Very cool animations. We're gonna take a look at here in a second. But yeah, it looks like our X is good. Now our Y, also good. And now the Z, which it is using the probe to measure. So I just want to make sure the axes work before we do the bed leveling, because that's what we're going to need to do next. Alright, so it looks like it used the CR Touch there as the Z in-stop switch. And also I'm going to go ahead and preheat it. And they do have hot buttons for everything. So yeah, excellently laid out the whole thing. So I really like the screen so far. So we know our motors and switches work. And also it is preheating, which is getting hot already. So let's go ahead and manually level the bed, which is the first thing you want to do. And then after we do that, we're going to auto bed level it, where the probe is going to go around and take the measurements all around the bed. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the screen, but I'll just tell you what I'm doing, and then later we'll go through all the details of it. So in the home page, or the middle button here on the bottom, we have a bed leveling. And so if we click on that, it's going to set us up for manual leveling. So you want to do the manual leveling first before you do the out of bed leveling. And now we're going to click on AUX leveling. And so it's going to bring up 5 points to click on around the bed. And we're just going to click around and level each corner. And then we can check the middle if we want at the end, which doesn't really matter because we have out of bed level. So let's go ahead and start with this corner here. We're going to bring our piece of paper here. So I am using a sticky note to do the gap. And yeah, we're just going to go around and roughly set the bed level on each corner. So again, you want to make sure that you're preheated. And you want to go around at least 2 or 3 times. When you change one corner, another corner moves also. So the closer you get it, the better. Then the out of bed leveling won't have to compensate as much. But we're pretty close at this point. So definitely close enough now where it's very even between the 4 points. So let's go to the middle for fun and see what it looks like. It is a little low, but that doesn't matter because the out of bed leveling sensor will compensate for it. So once we're done with that, we're going to go back and click on out of bed leveling, and it's going to measure the bed. And so when it's printing, it's going to be able to offset itself as it's going through the bed. Alright, so it's finished. Maybe you guys can see we have all these new parameters in here, and it's actually all pretty close. Like I think we're deviated at the most of about 0.3 to 0.4. So yeah, the bed is very level at this point. Now if you see these numbers thrown off quite a bit, that means you're probably not as level as you can be manually. So go back and do the AUX leveling and get it as flat as possible. Let's go ahead and load the filament. So we'll use this white PLA that came with the printer. And again, super cool that it's on a spool. So you want to cut your filament on an angle so it can feed easier. Simply going to put the spool on the spool holder and go through the detector. And by the way, it does glow a little blue light here as the spool feeds kind of like in a loop down to it. And then we're going to go into the extruder by pushing on the arm here and then feeding it inside down out the hot end. And it should purge here. And we'll just push it ourselves down until we see white, which is what we got. So yeah, pretty simple because this is direct drive. Very simple to put the filament in and out. So let's grab our little SD card that does come with this USB adapter, and it's going to plug in right here in the front, most likely upside down. Yep, sure enough. And we'll jump here to the screen and take a closer look at it. So on the top we have the company name and then a toggle switch, and this actually toggles from light to dark, and I definitely prefer the dark. That's a pretty cool option. So on the bottom, if you see, we have main kind of like pages. So this is where it starts, kind of like home, and you have your nozzle and bed heating, a leveling, and then accessing the files through the SD card. If we click over here, this is all our movements. Here we can move the individual axes, also choose the amount we want to move. And if I go up here, you can see that the Z changed 10 millimeters because I went 10. So this is the current position. And then we have to cut the motors free right here, or disable steppers. Yeah, I definitely like the way it's laid out and colored. So if we go to settings, we got refuel. That's going to be controlling the extruder. Advanced settings. So here they're giving you a warning. If you go into advanced, you got to know what you're doing. So if you agree that you do know, you can go in it. So we're not going to mess with that. Printer info, information about the printer, the model number, printing size, firmware version, and the Marlin version, and then the company website. And here we have initialized EEPROM. So yeah, pretty straightforward, guys. I mean, we have everything we need. And then here on the middle one, if you click on the nozzle, you can see here you can adjust it by clicking on it and do it a manual entrance, or you can just click on these hot buttons here, which is PLA and ABS. And also you have a cool down button, and you can control the fan from here too. So yeah, pretty straightforward on everything. And on the bed you get the same one. And then on the leveling here, it's a cute little animation. It does out of home itself. And then brings up the menu that we went through earlier, which was AUX, out of leveling, and then it gives you all of the readouts for the measurements. And you guys can see we're really close between each point. Now, one thing I totally forgot to do, which is kind of crazy, but we forgot to offset the Z-axis, which is the gap between the nozzle and the bed. So we need to do that right now. So once we go up or down, however much we need, we'll click on save, and that'll save it. So we're going to do that first, and then after that, we're going to click on this button here, which is the file, and it's going to read the SD card. And it looks like we do have a couple files in there we can print. A calibration cube and a benchy. That's usually what I always print from the start. So let's go back to our leveling, and I think we have to click on AUX leveling, and then we'll go to the center, which is 1, and then we'll go back, and now we can set our offset, which surprisingly we're a little bit far off. Then we're just gonna go up and down from there, so it looks like we got to go down quite a bit. At least a couple of millimeters. Minus 2.2, 2.35, 2.4, and that's actually pretty good, I think. So mine's ending up being minus 2.4, and I'm gonna hit the save button. and it's gonna save it, and that's how you set your offset. All right, I think we've done everything we need to do, so let's go ahead and start the cube as our first print. And we do get a new menu here. We'll look at it in a second. So we are preheated. We should be ready to go here pretty shortly. And there it goes. All right, so we are purging on the side. So far, our offset looks perfect. And it started the print. Now, you guys probably can't see very well. This fan shroud here is really in the way of viewing it. Might have to look at it from the side, but yeah, we're pretty much perfect off the build platform. Quite happy how easy that was. Just works right off the bat. So I'm gonna bring my mic in so you guys can hear the printer. It was reasonably quiet until this thing turned on, and yeah, I think it's running at full power, so it's making a lot of fan sounds. But as far as the steppers, they're actually quite quiet. Yeah, and if I stop this guy by hand here, you can hear how much quieter that is. I'm kind of curious why it's so loud. Okay, so it just quieted down, so it started louder. Now that it spun a little bit, it's quieter, a lot quieter. So yeah, I guess it just had a little moment there where it was just too loud. In any case, okay, so yeah, overall, I guess with the fan not being as loud, it's not too bad. Obviously, you can hear fan sounds. The stepper motors are still audible, but they're very faint. Overall, I would say the machine is moderately quiet. So the screen does have an auto dimmable feature, and it is dimmed now, so if you touch it, it comes to life. I'm not sure if that's adjustable or not. Well, for me, I'd like to turn that off because I like when it's brighter so I can see it from a distance. But I guess it does help with the screen life, especially if you're just printing and walking away and never really looking at it. All right, so this is what we see when we're printing. We got the file name. Let's see, what's this over here? Okay, so we got settings, which is this little button here, and we can do our z-axis offset on the fly. We can change our nozzle temperature, our bed temperature, our printing speed, change out the filament, and also adjust our fan speed, which I guess let's turn it down to 200. And it did get quite a bit quieter. If you want to make it a little quieter, you can do that. But 255 is where it normally is. So yeah, same thing for anything else. You just click on it and enter what you want. So here we have a dial, and it shows us the amount of time that's left and also how much time passed. So it's been 8 minutes since we started and 26 minutes left for printing. We got a stop and pause button, and here we have information like the nozzle temperature, the bed temperature, and how much the Z has traveled up from where it started, which is 5.1 millimeters. And on the way on the bottom, we have a progress bar of 25% completed so far. And if you do click here, it goes to this menu also. So yeah, very intuitive, and pretty much everything you need is here. And I do like this little animation here. All right, so we're printing away and everything looks good, and it's boogieing along with that calibration cube. So we'll print that out and see what it looks like. And I guess I'll go ahead and print out the benchy, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so we printed out both of the prints that came with the printer. Let's click on finish printing here, and it goes back to the main menu. And I guess also moves the bed, and now it won't even give it back to me. So let's release the steppers, and now we can move it. And that's in the move section, by the way. So in any case, the cube looks pretty good, and it's gonna be kind of hard to see it in white, guys, but let's go ahead and see how this mat works here. And it's still actually pretty warm. It's at 54°C, so yeah, it hasn't even had a chance to cool off. But yeah, the benchy's just stuck on there, and that's the great thing about these mats is that, you know, they're very flexible. It just peels right off, which is pretty incredible. Now, I think we are a little bit too close to the bed. You can see we kind of left a little mark there. And not only that, we do have like a little elephant foot. And I don't know if it's from being too close or what, but I think there's like one border around because the cube had the same thing exactly. So anyways, so on white, you're not gonna really tell much. I guess we can look anyway. So that's the top here, the Y, the X. Again, really hard to tell on these white prints. And this is the bottom actually. So yeah, it looks pretty much perfect, I would say. And on the benchy too, I mean, beautiful bottoms there. So if we look at the walls, very nice. The back there, stringing was very minimal. And yeah, everything looks really good. Honestly, much better than most printers that I see, at least with test prints.